Today is World Seafarers Day, and I take this opportunity to wish all seafarers a very happy Seafarers Day. May you have a safe and healthy year ahead, and may you reach great heights in your career. Today we have with us a stalwart from the shipping industry, and when I read his bio, you would surely agree to that. Our guest for the day is none other than Mr. Uday Randive, a veteran marine engineer, former chief surveyor to IRS, QMS lead auditor, and an author. I would like to introduce Mr. Randive in more detail, but before that, let me welcome him to this live chat. Welcome to the show, Mr. Uday Randive.
Thank you, Shama, for giving me a good opportunity to wear nice shirt and pant today after a long time.
I'm sure. I will now share with you the detailed introduction of Mr. Randive before we start a chat with him. Uday Randive is a marine engineer from 1965-69 batch of Directorate of Marine Engineering Training, now known as Marine Engineering and Research Institute, which is now a part of the Indian Maritime University. After graduating from DMET, he joined his first ship, Kanishk Jayanti, a 35,000 tons bulk carrier, as fifth engineer, and rose to the rank of chief engineer in a span of only 6 years. After sailing for 4 years as chief engineer, he decided to be with his family and took his first shore job as professor in his alma mater, DMET, as he found that he has a great passion for teaching. He shared his experience on ships and taught marine engineering knowledge for 2 years to the graduate engineers who had come to DMET for 1 year training. Later, he worked as a superintendent engineer with a shipping company for 1 year and then joined Indian Register of Shipping in March 1982. IRS is India's National Ship Classification Society, which verifies the designs of the ships and also surveys the ships towards the maintenance of their class with IRS. During the 30 years of his long service with IRS, he played many roles as a surveyor of ships, new construction, machinery plan approval, quality audits from ISO 9001 to TS 16949, ISO 14001, etc. He retired from IRS at the age of 65 as chief surveyor and senior vice president. Mr. Randive also holds MS degree from BITS, Pilani. After his retirement, he continued to conduct quality audits for Korean Register of Shipping, Russian Register of Shipping, and Class NK, the Japanese Class Society, for 2.5 years. In 2014, he was called back to IRS to work as full-time quality and training consultant, where he worked for 4 years before he finally retired. He has written several technical papers and has recently authored a book in which he has shared his experiences on ships. The book is titled Life Well Cruised. He still considers himself a student and teacher and looks forward to making a difference wherever needed. That is a lot of work, and I'm sure you will all agree. So, Mr. Randive, let us start with our chat, and we have got lots to understand and know from you today. I'm sure you're full of information, and I'm sure everybody who's watching us would be really interested and keen on listening to you. So let me first start with asking you, why is today, that is the 25th of June, observed as a Seafarers Day?
Yeah, let's understand what is a seafarer. Who is a seafarer first? A seafarer is any person employed on the ship which actually works beyond the port limits. So when we talk about a seafarer, a launch, from Ballard Pier or from our gateway of India, going inland to any ship, those people working on that launch cannot be called seafarers. The seafarer is the one who actually is employed on the ship which sails on the high seas or it goes beyond the port limit. So those are the seafarers. Now, on ships, who are the seafarers? They could be officers like master, navigating officers, chief engineer, or marine engineers. They're all seafarers. But apart from them, there is engine crew, there is deck crew, there is stewards, there are cooks. They're all considered as seafarers. And they work as a team on board the ship. And those are the seafarers which actually ensures that the ship carries its cargo from one end to the other end, one port to the other port, safely and without any problems, without any damage to the cargo. So those are the seafarers. Having understood who are the seafarers, now let us understand that why this Seafarers Day has been celebrated. Now, how many of you really know that 80-90% of the global cargo has been moved by ships all over the world? Like for example, you get all your commodities sitting at home, like pulses, grain, medicines, mobile phones. Everything comes from the containers or from the bulk carriers. And don't forget the petrol. That comes as a crude oil to our refineries over here, and then it is made into a petrol and given to us. So all these commodities are being given to all the landlubbers by the shippies. They're called as shippies. So these seafarers actually work under various difficult conditions. Actually, they are not only away from their families, but the monotonous job, the storms which they face, the bad weather they face, the living conditions at times. Sometimes, there are some unscrupulous owners who don't even pay them. So these are all various issues, conditions on which the ship owners, the seafarers are working and bringing the entire, all the cargo and ensuring that the cargo is delivered safely and without any damage. So to highlight this role of the the seafarers, it has been decided that 25th June would be considered as a Seafarers Day. It was in way back in 2010. There was a conference in Manila, a diplomatic conference in Manila under IMO. Now, IMO is International Maritime Organization, which is the body of United Nations. Now, IMO is represented by almost about 90 countries all over the world. India, of course, part of it. IMO is headquartered in London, and IMO is the highest regulatory body in the shipping field. They make all the rules and regulations, conventions, everything. So, if you remember the movie called Titanic, Titanic sank somewhere in 1914 or something like that. After Titanic sank, then the first convention, the safety convention called SOLAS, Safety of Life of Sea, was actually made by the IMO, and that was the time the SOLAS convention came up. And that is one of the pillars of the international maritime law. The second convention was marine oil pollution called MARPOL. The Torrey Canyon, in one of the oil tankers, ran aground and spilled almost about 2.5 million tons of oil on the UK shore. And then came the MARPOL Convention. So that is the Marine Oil Pollution Convention. And then when they found out that almost 80% of the accidents on ships are taking place, all because of the human errors, then they came out with the standards for certification and watchkeeping for the seafarers. So training, certification, and which is known as STCW Convention. That is another convention. And when they found out that the seafarers' conditions are not very good, many of them are sometimes not getting paid, the living conditions are not very good. So finally, IMO came out with a convention called Maritime Labor Convention called in 2006. So these are the four pillars of international maritime law. And that is how the seafarers have been facing all these problems. Finally, IMO has now taken a stand, and they have come out with the theme in 2021 that the immediate action needs to be taken, and all seafarers should be considered as the key workers in the shipping line, you know, shipping, commercial shipping. So ultimately, the people on shore, they really don't know what is a seafarer, what is he doing. All the commodities that they are getting, it is all because of the seafarer. So they need to understand, and the role of seafarers need to be highlighted to uh, to tell everybody that this is the important role which has been played by the seafarers for bringing the ships. And 25th June is just another date they had decided that on so and so day. By the way, I believe somebody told me that today is also World Alcohol Day. Nothing to do with actually seafarers day. Let me tell you that because today on ships there is no alcohol policy. During our time, it was alcohol was freely available, but nowadays they have come out with a no alcohol policy. So it is a good in a way because uh, sometimes due to alcohol some accidents have taken place on board the ship. So that is how the Seafarers Day is all about. That is how I can express that this is the Seafarers Day which has been celebrated.
So on 25th of June, they marked this day in order to celebrate, in fact, to commemorate all the work, all the efforts that these seafarers are doing. So, my next question to you is, how did you choose to become a marine engineer? Did you have any idea that a seafarer has to go through all this kind of, all that you expressed to just now explained about the seafarer? Do you have any idea that, had any idea before you became a marine engineer that you have to face all this in your sailing days?
No. Your question is about.
How did you become a marine engineer?
Okay.
What made you become a marine engineer?
Yeah. So this, I when I look back upon my entire career, I think it was a destiny.
Okay.
I really did not believe in destiny till today. I now feel that it was a destiny. For example, that actually what happened was I had no knowledge about what is marine engineering in my college days. All I knew was mechanical engineering and some, the electrical engineering, etc. Other was something like BSc. Uh, I was very fond of subject chemistry and partly physics. So I wanted to do BSc, and then I decided to join BSc in UDCT for BSc Tech. That's something like that. Those days, my parents were not here. The China issue was there, 1962, 65. So they were the political prisoners, and I was with my aunties, and I had to decide on my own where to go, how to go out, etc. So I was doing BSc, and one day a batchmate of mine who was with me in college, he came. He had joined marine engineering that day, that year rather. And he told me that, why don't you join marine engineering? I said, what is marine engineering? And so he explained to me what is marine engineering, etc. etc. I said, then my next question was, how much are the fees for this? So when I saw that it was completely subsidized education, because that time the government of India was promoting the shipping, and therefore they were buying ships. There were private companies which were given permission to buy ships, and so shipping was coming up very much. And that was a time when the marine engineering was also subsidized, and we had to hardly pay anything. And I thought that was a great thing for me because it was an adventurous thing. Pay was good. Pay was good actually. I was when I got my first letter of appointment on a ship, and I saw so much of a pay on the paper. I showed it to my uncle. My uncle looked at that my appointment letter and said, "Sure, there is no mistake in this because even I am not getting this much of pay, you know." So I said, I don't know. I mean, not only that, I said I am getting extra allowances because I will be working on bulk carrier, etc. So that is how actually initially when I came to know, then I applied. There was an entrance exam, and they used to take only 100 boys those days.
Okay. Mhm.
Only 100 boys all over India, which was, I thought that it was pretty competitive. Luckily, I was able to get through that, and that's how I joined marine engineering. But today, when I look back, I don't think I would have done anything else other than marine engineering. Let me tell you that.
Okay, that was going to be my question sometimes in the this thing, but you've already answered it, I think.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, okay.
No, that's all right. So you sailed for good 10 years. That's what I saw from your resume. So can you tell us about your experiences as a seafarer? You spoke about who a seafarer is, but now we want to listen to your specific experiences as a seafarer. You know what was your experience on the ship?
Yeah, I mean, all my experiences I have very well described in my book, which I have just been published, The Life Well Cruised. But then, since you're asking me, I would like to state a few experiences.
Yes,
The
please.
first experience, as you, I will like to say or share, is that on my first voyage, when I joined the ship in Japan, I was very happy that I was given a flight ticket by Indian Airlines to join the ship. I went to Goa. There was a nice car waiting for me, and then after that, that was the end of my luxuries. When I went on board the ship, the first thing the chief engineer, when I met him, he told me that this is a very, very tough life. We don't carry any backups here.
Mhm.
You better learn very fast and quickly. Otherwise, you don't stay on the ship. The only advantage was that he asked me which college you did your marine engineering, and I said DMAT, which is the Directorate of Marine Engineering Training, which is now MERI, Marine Engineering Research Institute. So he was mighty pleased because he himself had done and passed out from the same institute. So he was very happy. So that was the first experience. The second experience was when we started sailing. The sailing was okay. We used to keep watch. You know, all engineers do keep a watch. The watches are from, let us say, I used to keep with the fourth engineer, as junior. I was a junior engineer. So I used to keep a watch from 8 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock, and then night 8 o'clock to night 12 o'clock. That was our watches, 8 hours. But I used to do a additional extra work in between. That's a different thing. But these are the main watches. At 12 o'clock, the third engineer will take over, and from 12 to 4 in the evening, he will keep the watch. 4 o'clock, the second engineer will come and take over, and he will keep the watch from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And we will again take over from it. And that's how the watches will go on. So we were keeping watches. I was learning. Within few days, we entered South China Sea, and that is how the whole bad weather broke out. The ship started rolling, pitching very badly. I was in a very bad condition. I was feeling terrible seasickness. And that was the first time I was sailing, and the sea was so bad. To tell you frankly, whenever we used to go to Konkan when he was in schools, in those STs, used to go through the ghats. I used to feel like vomiting. Now you can imagine what must have happened to me there, you know. So it was, it was a bad scenario. But we cannot get medical leave, we cannot get casual leave, we cannot get sick leave. We cannot get Saturday, we cannot get Sunday on ship. You may understood. Right? You work for 365 days a year on a ship, you will not get a single day off. Neither 25th, 15th August, nor 26th January, nothing. Huh? We have to work every day from morning to evening or whatever watch times are there. And so I was keeping watch. As soon as my watch was over, I used to hit the bed. And I used to take shower and hit the bed. I said, I don't want to eat anything. And some people used to come, no, you must eat this, that to keep your strength, etc. Well, it happened for about 7-8 days. But out of that 7-8 days, every minute was bad. Every minute, every second, the ship was. You can imagine you're not stable, and so it actually reflects it. I mean, you go into fatigue, you don't get any sleep. So those are the basically conditions for a seafarer. It's not that everybody suffers like this. I suffered for the first time. Over a period of time, I got over it, so there was no problem. But initially, people do suffer. So that is another experience on the ship. And I went through various storms also later on. That is a different experience altogether. We went through famous Andhra cyclone in 1977, when my wife was with me, my 2-year-old son was with me, and I was scared. So these are the various storm problems. These are the bad weather problems. And always we are hoping that nothing goes wrong with our main engine in this weather, because then all the hell will break loose. Another experience which I would recount and like to tell is a wonderful experience. A wonderful experience to go through the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal, as you know, it was built long way back in 1914, because the ships from US East Coast, if they have to go to West Coast, they had to go all the way around Cape Horn of the South America and then take back. So almost about 8,000 nautical miles or maybe 15,000 kilometers they had to do extra. You can imagine how much oil was spent and how many days they must have taken. So they made the Panama Canal. This Panama Canal actually connects the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. And here, the wonderful thing is that the first time when I went through, I realized that the ship, which is normally in the ocean, is actually raised through the lock gates into a mountain where there is a lake, Gatun Lake. The Gatun Lake is actually in the mountain, and there are lock gates on both sides. So your ship from the ocean enters a lock gate. The lock gate, both doors are closed because it is full of water, and then the water in the lock gate is raised. The level of the water is raised. Then the ship comes up by maybe 20 feet or 30 feet like that. Then the second lock gate opens. The ship enters the second lock gate. Again the water level is raised. Again the ship enters the third lock gate. Again the water level is raised, and so it almost gets raised about 50 feet or 60 feet above the sea level by the time it enters the Gatun Lake in the mountain. And that was wonderful thing which I saw, that all the time we have been sailing in the sea, and today I can see the sea down below and I am up in my ship. That was something very, very fascinating for me for the first time when I went to the Panama Canal. And then the beauty of this Panama Canal, which is almost about 80 miles or something like that, took about 8 to 10 hours or so to cross one way. There is, of course, a pilot which we have to take. The pilot takes you through the entire Panama Canal in a convoy of the various ships. That particular travel, commute, or whatever you say, sailing through the Panama Canal is amazing because both sides such a lovely greenery is there. It's like a jungle, you know, a beautiful bird singing, chirping, and flying around, and the calm waters, and we are just going through as if it is a beautiful whether we are going as a sailing passenger ship, something like that, you know, so serene atmosphere, I would say. A very tranquil atmosphere, which I would describe it. And then almost for 8 hours, we could watch very nicely apart from our watch keeping. And then you go at the other end, and then same process from one logget to other logget to other. You go down. That means the level goes down, and then you come out of the sea. So these are some of the very good experiences on the sea, which I can share with you. I think many of the experiences I have described in my book. I
We
would.
have to read it. We're all going to read it
Yeah,
very
there,
soon.
there, there are various, many suspenseful experiences which I have described. I would not like to describe it here
No, no, no,
because,
no, no, no. I'm sure.
but,
I'm sure. We
but,
also don't. We also want to keep some suspense, in the book. Not
yeah.
suspense as such, but some curiosity to read the book.
But apart from these experiences, what is more important is that we all shipmates must get well with each other. That is very important for the teamwork because I have seen that on my last ship when I was sailing with my wife and what my last voyage, uh, things went very bad. In fact, I was the chief engineer, and at about 12:30 or so at night, captain called me. He said, "Chief, please come up on the bridge as soon as immediate." So you normally put on your boiler suit, which is very quickly. You can get dressed anywhere. I went on the bridge. That is the Riyadh. And what do I see? The second officer was completely drunk, and he was swaying up down, and he was abusing captain. And he said that captain told me that, "Chief, I am putting all this behavior in the official logbook, and please, you have witnessed it, so please sign it." And so it is something which I have never seen because any disgruntled officer can create a problem, can create, can make a sabotage also on the ship. It is possible. But of course, he was taken off in the next port. He was not allowed to keep any watch. Captain kept his watch. But that's okay. But we don't have any backups, as I said. Like when I went on the same ship to join, we were all new to that ship because this ship, the last ship, its name was Akbar. It was owned by the Greek owners, and they had just taken over from the Swedish owners. And so the handing over and taking over of the ship was going on. So I was the chief engineer, and the second engineer, captain, and chief officer. Four of us actually joined the ship about 3 days before the sailing, 3 or 4 days before the sailing. Later on, the entire crew along with the junior officers came, and I found that the third engineer has got a medical problem. So last minute we won't get a third engineer, so I had to sign him off. I won't allow him to sign on the ship, and so I had to keep the third engineer's watch then. So these are the problems which you face all of a sudden. These are the challenges which you faced all of a sudden. The another challenge on the same ship I faced before sailing, that it was decided that the Swedish second engineer would sail with us from Japan to USA, as we were all new to that ship. All officers were completely new, and we hadn't got any time for handing over and taking over the ship as such. And it was decided that he will be paid the Swedish wages, whatever the wages. It was agreed upon. There was a big party, handing over, taking over. Champagne was flowing like anything. And then the second engineer started demanding more money. It was like a ransom. He demanded from a Greek captain that I want double the wages. Then only I will sail. Otherwise, I will not sail. He thought that it is a great opportunity to make more money. A ransom. Now this captain, Greek captain, who was the owner's representative, his name was Captain Diagakis. He came to me. He asked me privately, Chief, can you take the ship to USA without him? Now see, this was a challenge to me thrown at me immediately. Suddenly. I said, yes, of course, we'll take the ship to USA, no problem. So he went and blasted this fellow. I said, you get out of my ship now, this is my ship. And he threw him out. The question was, all of us were new. But then that is the challenge the marine engineer faces. That you have to do it, you have to do it. There is no other way. At sea, something goes wrong, you are not going to get any help from shore. Huh? You have to do it by yourself. So those are the challenges which I faced. And because of those challenges, when I look back upon and any problem comes now, I feel as if those challenges you faced, what is the problem now?
I'm sure, yeah.
So I think I have explained a lot of, shared a lot of my experience, sea experience.
Yes. Your Panama Canal experience was really.
Yes, I have described that.
And we are waiting to, and now this is bringing us or making us even more curious to read your book, The Life Well Cruised. So we all will be reading the book, but yes, we wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth, and we got it from the horse's mouth.
Right.
So, in your 10-year span of sailing, did you ever, and I'm sure you must have ever experienced fatigue, loneliness, and all of that? And if you did, how is it that you tackled it? Because I'm sure that is something very common among seafarers.
Yeah, my first ship was Kanishka Jayanti, and I spent 6 months on it. I was very lucky to get a very good shipmates, and we were getting along very well. And then we made some trip to USA, came back, I think, to Japan. And then I got the news that our ship is going to Vancouver, Canada to load wheat. And then she's going straight to Bombay docks, Mumbai. I was so thrilled, oh my God. I said, after 6 months or 8 months, whatever it is, at least I can get a chance to go back to my city, which I miss so much, and my friends, my family. But that was very short-lived because the chief engineer, I was 15 years old. The chief engineer came down and he told me, hey, Uday, you are got transferred from here to Gautama Jayanti. So go to Gautama Jayanti, pack up your things and start packing, and tomorrow you are leaving. I said, what? Are you kidding? I said, I was just thinking of going back to Mumbai. And now you're telling me go back to Chiba. Go to Gautama Jayanti. But anyway, me and that other 5th engineer both had to leave the ship and we had to go to Gautama. When I went to Gautama Jayanti, that Gautama Jayanti was on a charter with Aluminum Company of America over a period of time. And Gautama was a very good ship, fast ship, always goes to ahead of time. And so Alcoa, that is Aluminum Company of America, always chartered this vessel in their. So when I went there, I started complaining, hey, now 6 months I've been there, and now I have to complete my time for my sea time for my exams, next competency exams. So now another 12 months I would be here, that is for another 1 year. So that Swami Karge, he was a radio. He says, what are you telling, man? I'm here for last 27 months on this same ship here.
Oh my God.
I said, what? 27 months? Yes. There was a third officer. He says, sir, I am here for last 21 months. I have not gone home. I said, why? They said, they are not given us holiday, leave. I have asked for a leave, they have not given me leave. What to do? So those were the days of marine engineers. So they were in tremendous, uh, demand. Unlike today's thing that there is no shortage because the supply is much more than the demand. But those days were good days for marine engineers. Very very good days. So uh, basically, as I said, we got very good shipments on even Gautama Jain. Very good shipments. Great shipments, I would say. So I forgot about Kanishka. I loved Gautama so much that when I finally signed off after 18, 19 months for the first time, without coming back, without going on leave, continuous working, the 65 days working, no Saturday, no Sunday, nothing, no medical leave. I was actually feeling very, very sad because I signed up in Singapore and instead of, yes, one side I was very happy to go back to Mumbai with my family, but other side, that ship's life was so good that I felt very sad to leave my shipmates. So I was totally attached to that ship. It becomes your sort of a home.
Yeah.
But this is how it happens. That's so you take care of your loneliness as long as your shipmates are good and you know you get along well and the camaraderie has to be developed among all of us. And it all depends upon the chief engineer and master how they get along, frankly speaking. Because if they get along well, down the line everybody gets along well. That is how it is. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes. Uh, yes, it's more to do about what other kind of batchmates or your shipmates that you get. That is how it can help you in combating the fatigue and the loneliness and all of that. I'm sure, yes, it plays. Your teammates really play a lot of role in your life, and
Yes,
especially
but
for
as far as fatigue is concerned,
Mhm.
fatigue comes basically when you're not enjoying your job. That is one. Not enjoying your work. But fatigue on the ships, it does come when you don't get your sleep properly due to bad weather. So when the weather is bad, especially in the beginning when you are started sailing, you don't get proper sleep. And one day, uh, I must share this. After about 6 months, or maybe 6 or 7, 8 months, I bought my first bottle of whiskey. I never used to drink on board the ship. Huh? So I bought the first bottle of whiskey just for the sake of it. Black Label whiskey was the best. So I kept it on the somewhere on the cupboard, and that that bottle during the ship started rolling and pitching, and I wanted to sleep. I was sleeping, half asleep. That bottle fell down in the cabin. It broke completely, and I had to clean up the whole mess. So my first bottle went to the devil, as I can say. The whiskey bottle. But surprisingly, I'm telling you, I never used to drink on board the ship. And ship used to have lots of parties because there is nothing else to do. Every evening there is a party. Huh? Every evening you go to the lounge and party. So and Saturday, Sundays more. So I used to stick to the fruit juice, canned fruit juice. One day my chief engineer saw me. He said, "Hey, you are so skinny." I was very skinny those days. He said, "You're very skinny. You need to put on some weight. You must drink beer every day. One beer every day." I never liked beer, and I used to throw that beer. You know. But in that, I could not drink even fruit juice. But when I went to Gautama, there I developed my taste for beer. But these are some of the anecdotes which I thought I would share with you.
Yes,
So,
lovely,
talked about
lovely
fatigue.
listening to them. So, yeah, we were speaking about, fatigue and loneliness and all of that. But, somewhere in our conversation, I heard you saying that you had taken your wife and your son. also your 2 years old son on the ship. Now, what happens is the ship is your workplace, and if your spouse and your family is there along with you on the ship, does it cause any kind of discomfort with the family being around, or how is it? Can you just tell us something?
Now there are two issues here. One is it's a great feeling that your family is here with you, and with what experience I've had is that my wife used to be very busy looking after my son Rohan. He was nearly 2 years old. Um, so she used to be uh, doing her job, looking after him. As far as I was concerned, I was quite happy to carry the family. There was another family, captain's family was also there, so it was a good thing to mix up and we can talk to each other. But the issue is when there is a problem on the ship or when the weather turns bad, any seafarer who's carrying his family will first think because he knows what can happen. Like a doctor, when he's seeing a patient, the patient doesn't know what can go wrong, what all things can go wrong. A doctor can predict, okay, from here to here. Similarly, on a ship, a seafarer, like marine engineer or master, anyway, he knows what can go wrong. And so, for their safety, I felt when going through this Andhra cyclone, my whole main engine, if you look from top, it was shaking like this, forward and aft. And I didn't know what, I mean, I was quite scared. So that is an issue. That is a discomfort if you're talking about. Not otherwise, there was no discomfort there. She was very happy. She was very happy because she didn't have to cook anything. Everything was served. Morning, the steward is to come with the breakfast. In the morning, whatever breakfast you order or whatever you want, he will come with that. You have breakfast here, or you can go to the lounge and have it. Rohan used to be very excited when the steward used to come, with breakfast. And at times, sometimes he used to bring the breakfast around 7:30, 8 o'clock. And so it was good. And luckily, somehow she never suffered from seasickness. Neither Nilu nor Rohan, they didn't suffer from any seasickness. You know, so that was a good thing. But another incident which I'm not going to say it now, it is written in my book
We will read
because
it.
it's a very scary incident
Oh, okay. No,
about
no.
taking my wife on board the ship. You can read that because
Yes,
that was
we
something with that time I was very scared.
definitely will read in the book. Definitely will read in the book. So, apart from all this that you spoke about, what are some of the other issues that a ship faces? And, what are the kind of, if how these issues are taken care of by legislations or regulations?
Yeah, I mean, first issue of any seafarer is the safety and security. Now, when I say safety, it means on a ship, whether you're working on the deck, whether you're working in the engine room, it's machinery, you might get injured. If you get injured, you might fall down from the top. It's no, in the engine room is about like a 10-story building. You go up and down every day from 10 stories, with all the railings and ladders. So it is possible that you might slip sometimes, you might fall, you might get injured, but there is no doctor on board. There's only a first aid kit. If something happens to any seafarer, it's we don't get a doctor. It's only on the passenger vessels that you have a doctor, nurses, all that. But not on cargo ships. We have normally all cargo ships have what is called as a hospital room, which is one cabin which is converted into a sort of a hospital, which has got a bed and all the medicines over there. But these are all general medicines. So that is one of the problems for you don't get a medical. So that is one of the safety aspects. Second safety aspect is, of course, something happens to the ship. There are incidences, even recent incidences, where the ships have gone down, ships are broken into two. So that is the biggest hazard for a ship seafarer. I mean, I have quoted um, many incidences in my book. One of the ferry, which you know, which carries the car also. You have cars with ferries. Many times we are. I think in India also we have started a car ferry over there.
Mm-hmm.
So that by mistake, the ask a door from where the cars are getting inside in the bottom deck, that was left open, and the water came inside, and the ferry tilted and sank. So many people died. So these are the things which can happen, which is always a problem with any ship. Or should something happen to ship where uh, its hull breaks down, it gives away because of the dynamic loading conditions of the sea. So these are all possibilities. But then today, with better and better design, probably ships are uh, designed properly. But you never know, because the sea dynamic loading conditions can never be predicted, at least as of now. So this is one, the safety part of it. Security, as you know, piracy is one of the big issues now.
Yeah.
You must have seen that movie called Captain Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
That movie is a lovely movie. They have shown how Somali pirates actually capture the huge container ship, and then they take ship's captain, kidnap him or take him as a ransom for ransom. It was a lovely movie. So these Somali pirates, that is another security problems as far as seafarer is concerned. Then, other than that, we have other issues. Now, recent issue was pandemic.
Yes.
This COVID-19 pandemic was a problem for the people who were on board. They got stranded. They were not be able to repatriate it back to their countries, etc. That is another issue. Then sometimes you have unscrupulous owners, ship owners. They don't pay. Sometimes they abandon their ship. Sometimes their ships get uh, arrested in some ports for not paying the port dues. Sometimes they don't maintain the ships properly, and then the seafarer has to pay for it. Pay means, the ship goes down. Or you must have heard recently this Taukei storm which came to Bombay. There was a big barge, accommodation barge called P700 and something or something. There's so many, almost 90 people died on the barge because probably the master did not take the barge to a safer place, thinking that this would be safe. Another issue was that I must narrate it over here. There was a vessel on which the captain and the chief engineer both were Indian. That was anchored in Korea. And there was a Samsung platform which was also anchored somewhere near. Samsung is the Korean platform. This was in Korean waters. The Samsung platform actually broke its anchor because of bad weather and came and dashed against this ship, which was anchored somewhere else. Now, whose mistake is that? It is definitely not the captain and the chief engineer. But the Korean authorities put these two gentlemen in the prison for having spilled the oil. because
environmental hazard.
obviously the oil platform came, or whatever platform was there, it came and dashed against this, and it broke open some tank, oil tank. The oil came out and polluted the Korean waters. So for which the master and the chief engineer had to go, and I think the Indian government had to intervene, and finally, for some time, it happened. So these are some of the things which seafarers can get arrested also for all these reasons. So that's the
But
life.
yeah, but what happens, right, in such cases? How does the legislation or the regulation helps them?
You're talking about
When all
the
these issues like this happen, so like if
yes,
somebody is
yes.
put under the prison or
Yes.
something like that, how is it? What are the ways that they can just get out
Yeah,
of it?
as I mentioned, the Maritime Labour Convention
Hmm, hmm,
2006 came to being in 2006. So all those countries who have ratified that convention,
hmm, hmm.
they ensure that their ships, there means the flag of the like Indian flag ships, could
Yes.
be US flag ships, whatever ships, they ensure that their ships are uh, have implemented this convention. For example, the MLC convention ensures that the seafarers' living conditions and sanitary facilities are good. Their cabins are of appropriate size.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
They have got a proper heating arrangements in the cold countries as well as or cold climate, as well as the air conditioning where there is a hot climate. It ensures that their wages are paid. And above all, the fatigue factor has been taken care of, that they cannot work more than 8 hours.
Hmm.
That means the maximum working hours rate. And if at all somebody has to work more than 8 hours, then he has been given a compensatory off. So all these are very highly uh, identified in the Maritime Labour Convention,
Hmm.
and the MLC inspectors will go on board the ship. They will talk to the crew, they will talk to the officers, they will observe, including the galley, the food storage, everything. And if not satisfactory, they will arrest the ship or detain the ship.
Okay.
They'll detain the ship, they'll ensure that the owner actually uh, complete their recommendations, and then only the ship will be allowed to leave.
To say. Uh, in the conversation somewhere, you just made a mention of pandemic. How has this pandemic, according to you, this COVID-19 situation, how has this affected the seafarers?
It has affected seafarers in two ways. One is the countries would not, because they had stopped people from coming from outside countries. Let us say if somebody wants to be repatriated, because once you finish the contract of say 8 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
as per MLC, I think the contract maximum contract is now is 11 months.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond 11 months, they consider it as not safe for him to operate the vessel mentally, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, due to pandemic, they were not allowed to be repatriated because the countries would not allow the seafarers to get down from the ship
Mm.
in their country. So they had to work beyond their contract period, and many of them, I think maybe thousands or hundreds of thousands people are still stranded at various ports because they are not allowed to come back to their own country. Various countries put lots of specific quarantine periods, quarantine, and uh, they won't allow the people to travel. So people got stranded, And in one of the two of the Indian ships which brought the coal from Australia and went to China to discharge the coal. Because of this problem, there was some diplomatic problem between Australia and China. The Chinese would not allow this ship to people to get repatriated. They just they won't discharge the coal either, and they kept the ships like that. So it was very difficult for the seafarers to stay on the ship and no shore leave. I mean, after sailing for a period of say 30 days, 40 days, if you don't get a shore leave to go ashore, so they were not allowed to go on shore also. So staying on board the ship, it can, create problems for you all the time. And on the other side, those people who wanted to make a living, those seafarers were stranded at home in the sense that they could not take up the jobs. So there was nothing for them to earn the money. So these are the ways in which, but I must tell you that all the seafarers, you know, were able to work on the ships and move the cargo without making any fuss. And they did their duty throughout this pandemic. So the global cargo was completely discharged or it was moved from place to place.
Yes. I know for sure that cargo was moved from place to place because I work with certain companies who are into import and export, and we are like continuously talking with the staff, and we know that yes, things are moving from port to port, and that's happening. So that's a good sign that, or that's a good news we can say. But yes, stranding on the ship or getting stranded at home is something that is that needs to be really uh, taken into consideration. But what to do? Everybody, I think, is going through this pandemic, and it's tough on everyone and all professions at the moment. Most of the professions. So yes, it is about that. So we heard a lot about you from your seafaring days. You did an onshore job also for a very long time. So any experiences or which job did you enjoy more? The seafarer's job was of more fun and enjoyment, more challenging, or the onshore job gave you more sort of more happiness and pleasure?
I would compare the seafarer job with the job which I worked for IRS, Indian Register of Shipping, for almost 30 years. Let me compare that because the other two jobs were not as challenging as both these jobs. Seafarer job was much more paying, definitely, there's no doubt about it. But also and challenging. But the IRS job, I continued to enjoy it till the last day. Because of the knowledge which it gave me, the knowledge it had within, the knowledge I had to grasp all the time. So more and more challenges, and it was a full of knowledge, this job. Whether it could be welding, whether it could be metallurgical, whether it could be electrical, whether it could be mechanical. I mean, all types of you know jobs, type of work, type of challenges was there, and I had to learn and learn and learn and continuously learn and develop my competency. Continuous development of competency was there, because any organization, if you don't develop the competency, you will become obsolete very shortly. So the IRS job was much more challenging, much more enjoyable, because I did varying type of jobs, not just ship survey. It's not just the new construction. I did a lot of auditing, I did a lot of training, I did a lot of quality jobs, and I was very happy because I visited a lot of industries, from mechanical industries, like from Jamshedpur in Tata Steel to software industries in Mumbai or other parts, and Maharashtra or all over India. I just would like to also share one anecdote. When I had gone to Kerala, to inspect the transformers, huge transformers, not the small transformers. And that was probably that was actually ISO 9000 certification for that company. ISO 9001 certificate those days was very prestigious certificate. So we had gone a team of three of us, which two South Indian, my colleague of mine, and me. So those two South Indians were highly religious people, and they wanted to visit the Guruvayur temple, were a famous Guruvayur temple. And so they said, no, no, we have to go there. I said, okay. So we all went. The management representative of that company took us there in a car. Now, before you enter the Guruvayur temple, you have to put on lungi,
Yeah.
dhoti.
Yes.
Not you can't go in pant, you have to
Yes.
put on dhoti. So there are shops which actually lend you this dhoti. So these two gentlemen very quickly they dressed because they're used to putting dhoti on. I was a little struggling with putting the dhoti on. So this shopkeeper was very curiously watching me. Then he asked that management representative, this gentleman doesn't seem to be from South, huh? He doesn't know how to put on dhoti. That management representative, knowing about my father, and he was very famous in Kerala, he went and blabbered, do you know whose son he is? He says, whose son he is? He says, he's son of Comrade B.T. Ranjive. He says, what are you telling? Comrade B.T. Ranjive's son going to temple. That was a very, very funny situation. He said, this is a news. I must tell everybody.
Oh God. I hope it was not in the headlines of the newspapers in Kerala the next day.
No, luckily nothing happened. But there are so many incidences in everybody's life, not just in my life, everybody's life. One can, very funny incidences, very good incidences, very proud incidences. And we always live by those memories.
Yes.
And so
Wonderful
I
memories.
thought that I must put my memories down.
Yes, yes. We're going to come to your book later, but before that, I want to ask you one question, and that is, what kind of a career advice would you give to the following two categories of people? First is students who aspire to do marine engineering, and the second and become seafarer, and the second is for professionals who are already into this career.
Oh, you're talking about the advice being given to the smart
What kind of
generation.
advice should you give? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about this smart generation, and if you were to give advice to them, I don't know whether they like it or not. But since you asked me, I might think of some advice. I mean, for the students who are inspiring to become marine engineers.
Mm-hmm.
You know that today I was just talking to the present director of the Marine Engineering College, Kolkata. He's I think he's an IT graduate now, if I'm not mistaken, in tech. And he's actually from Indian Navy. He's a Commodore. And I had a long discussion with him on the jobs which are available today. And he said, yes, our Indian shipping companies, there are not many jobs for, because everybody who passed out from our college in the last year, they were not able to get the jobs. But then he said they need to go somewhere else to find the job. So presently, the job situation is very difficult.
Okay.
However, there are three good training institutes who have their own ships or their own shipping companies. They have started their own training institutes. Like one is the Great Eastern Academy, which is in Lonavala. There is another Tolani Maritime, which is in Talegaon. That is for the Tolani shipping. And the third one is Samudra Institute, which is owned by one of my students. I taught in BMAT that time. He was my student,
Mhm.
and I'm quite proud of him. His name is B.S. Tika. He has got an executive ship management company in Singapore. So it's a huge institute, and he had invited me long back and asked me to visit that institute. So these are the three institutes which where if you do the marine engineering from today, I'm saying, then there are more chances of getting jobs. I'm
Job.
sure the smart generation knows about it. I'm only saying it, but they must be knowing about it. So
Yes.
that is as far as they are. But there are some institutes which are very very bad in private institutes, and they just take your money and don't get involved into such. At least definitely that advice I would give you. Just because they are giving you that master gets so much of dollars, so many, etc., and they advertise like that. Don't go by that thing. They
Mhm.
such institutes are not good, and you will not get a job after you pass it. So
Mhm.
this is the caution which I would tell them.
Mhm.
As far as the professionals are concerned, again, as I said, that they're all smart professionals who have already done their stint at the sea. They have come ashore. They have got higher qualifications, and they know where to go. They have done marvelously, much better than many of us. And but I would say that what you look for actually, basically, either you look for satisfaction of the work, or you look for money part, or you look for both, or you want to be an entrepreneur, whatever it is. Um, you have to uh, see what is your preference, where you want to. And I think there is nothing much I can advise them because they are aware of the present situation in the marine field and they choose accordingly. So all the best to them. I won't be able to give them something advice. All I can say that you can try to join Indian Register of Shipping (IRS) or any classification society, for that matter, like Lloyd's Register of Shipping, whatever. You will get a lots and lots of knowledge. I mean, there has been a trend that the people who are joining IRS, staying with IRS for 3, 4, 5 years, and then they are using IRS as a stepping stone to some other organization. Because IRS, you get knowledge, and then once you have a knowledge, you're always preferred in other
Outside.
institutions.
True.
I
Well,
hope
yes.
we're not running out of time, huh?
No, 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 no. Don't worry about the time. We are all
Okay.
enjoying listening to all your experiences and the talk that is happening. So yes, but things have to come to an end sometimes. But before we close, $1 million question: what inspired you to write the book Life Well Cruised? And tell us a little bit about the book. Of course, you have been speaking about the book all through our conversation, but if you can give us a little more.
No, actually, I'll tell you. Whenever I used to meet uh, our family members as well
Mhm.
as various other friends, acquaintances, they used to ask me a lot of questions about the sea life or life
Mhm.
on the ship. So I used to explain, but I used to find that they used to be wanting more and more. They used to ask more questions. And then I used to narrate many stories to my wife also. So she suggested that all these memoirs, why don't you pen down? I said, who will read? What is there? What is there to pen down? He said, no, I think you must pen down. I think she insisted that, and then COVID came,
Mhm.
and so there was first 3 months or 4 months without maid. We went into survival mode without the maid servants and all that thing. So for
Yes.
first 4 months we were not, you know. Once the maids started coming, slowly we got back to our own field, and then it became probably it dawned on me that if I put and I start writing down. So somewhere in month of July, August of 2020, I started actually writing something. And my wife was also very much interested in what I'm writing, how I'm writing. She also remembered something and she added her own. So like that, it went on getting developed and developed. So finally, I completed my first raw manuscript and I gave it to my cousin, Ajit Rangnekar,
Mhm.
who, as you know, that he was a former dean of Indian School of Business,
Mhm. Mhm.
Hyderabad. So he he read it in one sitting and he gave me a good encouragement. He said, "Yes, this can be a good book." And the second manuscript I gave it to our cousin, Neil's cousin Ashok Sonarkar.
Yeah.
And he, after about 15-20 days, he was quiet. He didn't say anything. After about 23 weeks, he came back with full of praise. He says, I learned so much. I didn't know this. I didn't know that being an engineer, etc. This, that. And he says, there's a very funny incident. This is, he gave a lot of encouragement. He says, no, 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 you must write this book. So with that, I think I got a good bit of confidence, and then I said, okay. And luckily, I spoke to Yogesh Deshpande, who
Mhm.
gave me some knowledge about the publishers.
Mhm.
And so I searched on the internet about the publishers, and I found this Notion Press as a good publisher because they were good because their team at every stage worked on my book, and I'm very happy. So with all this is basically a teamwork, and I have acknowledged all my people who have helped me in my book. And many people who have helped me, I have acknowledged them in my book. So somehow, after some time, after many editings, that finally we decided to, okay, this is the final edition, final one. So basically, it was my wife and the people who were asking me all these questions, and the non-seafarers, basically the non-seafarers, because how will they know what is the life on the ship unless and
Yes.
until I tell them? And also, I must say that Adit, my son,
Mhm.
no, initially I sent a manuscript to Rohan. Rohan gave me a lot of suggestions. You know, I this must look like this. I mean, he also is like a naturally came back in spite of his busy um, work, staying in USA. He went through and he gave me suggestions. If this would look better if you do like this. So that was a very number of suggestions he gave me. And then I wanted to take all the maps which I put into the my book. Those maps I thought I could pick it up from Google and put it, but then it became a copyright issue.
Hmm.
So now I was stuck up here. I said I want maps. Without maps, the book would not. People would not imagine how the ship moved from one place to other place. So there, Adit came to my help. Adit did all the maps on his own. You know.
Oh,
So there, yeah.
wonderful.
And I don't know how we made it, but the maps were available on Google. But he had to make his own maps because there was so that there is no copyright issue. So with that, the maps were in place, and so all these people really helped me to publish my first book. And I enjoyed writing. Frankly speaking, I enjoyed writing. And even today, my wife is enjoying the reading of that book. Even today.
I am sure it will go on and on and on. So, when is
But
this book available? Is it available on Amazon?
yeah, it is available on Amazon.in. It is available on Amazon International. It is available on Flipkart.
Okay.
Yes.
And it is called The Life Well Cruised, correct?
No, life well cruise. It is not, there is no the in it. Just
Okay.
life well cruise.
Life Well Cruised. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. This
And
is for our
I was
audience.
also I was also wanting to tell our audience
Mm-hmm.
that how the times have changed. When we were at sea, or even for that matter, many years after that, it was all entirely male-dominated area. There was
Yeah.
no question of any women, any female going on board the ship and sailing. The times have changed. Uh, Today, many seafarers, all
Mm-hmm.
officers, navigating officers, and engineers, many ladies are sailing. They are sailing as chief engineers, they are sailing as masters, and today the Seafarers Day was celebrated with gusto, with all the officials like DG Shipping, Indian government, everybody like that. And there is the first vessel of Shipping Corporation of India called MT Swarna Krishna, Swarna Krishna, 50,000 oil tanker, which has been manned completely by all women officers. All women officers on board, from master to the third officer, and from chief engineer to the fifth engineer, they're all ladies who are sailing as a team on this MT Swarna Krishna, and that's an oil tanker.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all felicitated today, at least chief engineer and captain were felicitated today. And this is a proud moment for us, for India, that now I can't even imagine what I have gone through, how these ladies may go through. They may not have so such experiences, but even then, to take that highest responsibility of the engine, solving the problems, as well as master's navigation, this fantastic. Loading the oil tanker is not an easy, it's a very dangerous operation. Loading on oil inside the oil tanker, it's extremely dangerous operation. You know, and this is all done by the ladies today. So I'm very proud of them, all these ladies officers. Yes.
Indeed, a proud moment, and kudos to all these lady seafarers who are doing such phenomenal work. And kudos to you too for for your service in this industry for about how many, more than 45 years, 40 years?
Total,
Yes, total.
a total service. I started my service in 1969 on ship,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I finished in 2014 almost. No, 14, no, so 2018.
2018. Yes, that long
So
of
I
a
worked till 2018 end, December 2018.
18 years. Wow, wonderful. If we can do even half of that, I mean, we will really consider ourselves lucky.
But it gives me immense pleasure that I have done this marine engineering, and I've been a seafarer. I'm very proud of that. And
Yes,
I don't think any job would have fitted me other than this. So
yes,
that's why I call it as a destiny. I
yes.
was destined to become marine engineer.
I'm sure you will. I was in fact going to ask you, a question like, if not marine engineer, what would you be? But you repeatedly kept saying that I would not be anything other than a marine
So,
engineer. So I
at
don't
this
think
stage,
so.
it would be very difficult after going through all that. Probably I could have been somewhere doing a quality audits or maybe teaching, because training was my passion, is still my passion.
Okay.
And I started the all the computerized computer based CPT training in IRS on for the ships, and I'm quite proud of it. Got a director's award for that, but that's apart from that. But main thing is, when you create something new, a challenging work, you feel very nice. Of course, I was with the team, not alone. There was a three, four of us who
Oh, it's
consistently
always
worked.
a team.
Yeah, it is always a team. So it was a very challenging job, and that's why I could have gone into training profession. This is what I probably feel, because I love training, love to train. I remember when we had called Mr. Ganesh Natarajan.
Mm-hmm.
He was the managing director of this software company in Pune.
Mhm.
And when he came, I knew him very well. He came to my house also, being with his wife. So I had called him to address our young surveys in IRS. And before he started his talk, he said, first, I must tell you that I'm first a trainer and then the managing director of this.
Yes.
So that is what I thought, that training was always my passion. It had become passion in the end.
I have realized one thing because I'm in the profession of teaching for a very long time now. Teaching cannot come unless there's a passion to do that. So that is something
Yes,
that I
yes,
have really,
yes. Whatever work you do, you
whatever work
must
you
have a
do.
passion.
True, yes,
Without
true.
passion, you will not succeed.
Yes, yes. I'm sure, yeah. Definitely. It was really, really wonderful talking with you, understanding all these experiences from you. Luckily for me, I have started understanding a little bit of these terms now for obvious reasons. You know why. So when you spoke about the Marpol Convention or all these other conventions, I could relate to it somewhere. The oil spillage and all of those things. I could relate to it. So it became more interesting for me. But I'm sure it has become even more interesting to our audiences who's watching because they all wanted to understand your experiences and all that. To my audiences, what I would tell is that yes, Mr. Randive, Uday Dada has shared all his experiences with us, a lot of experiences. But for more experiences, we have to all read the book Life Well Cruised and understand more about his experiences as a seafarer. And I'm sure it is going to be an interesting read for all of us. And thank you so much, Uday Dada, for accepting this invitation and coming here and talking to me, and also sharing so much, so much, so much. And
My pleasure.
this
All
will
my
go
pleasure to come here. And um, thank you for, as I said, giving me a good opportunity to express myself for the first time. I have not gone on any of the. I used to go when I was young, but of late I have not gone because of the COVID and because of after retirement. Normally. So thank you very much for having me.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And with this, we come to the end of this live chat. Thank you, everybody who's watching us. And thank you, everyone who will watch us later. So, have a lovely evening ahead and a lovely weekend that will follow. Good
Okay.
night.
Bye. Bye. Good night. Good night to all of you. Bye.
Yes.